David, minister of the 12th Apostolic Sabbatarian Congregation downtown at the 12th on Liberty Hill, Texas. Today is August 10, 2013. Our is the 4th day of Elu, 2017. We will start our 4th service on this 7-day Sabbath with the song entitled of There's Power in the Blood. Would you be free from the burden of sin? There's power in the blood, power in the blood. Would you want evil of victory win? There's wonderful power in the blood. There's power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There's power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Would you be free from your passion and pride? There's power in the blood, power in the blood. Come for the cleansing to Calvary's side. There's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Would you desire much white and snow? There's power in the blood, power in the blood. Since things are lost in this lightning flow, there's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Would you be service for Yahweh your King? There's power in the blood, power in the blood. Would you live daily His praises to sing? There's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Hello everyone, once again this is Elijah David. We're going to continue on with the Patriarchs and Prophets, chapter 30, entitled The Tabernacle and Its Services. Folks, we are looking at the Atonement season and Feast of Tabernacle season coming up here in September sometime. It's right upon us. Heavenly Father has got a message for us today. It's so wonderful how He plans ahead. Ellen G. White is the one delivering today for us. The prophetess of Seventh Day Adventist Church. Okay, we're going to get right on into it. I told you earlier from my earlier service to read Psalm chapter 18 for your prayer thought for this. Well, I also read James chapter 2 for your prayer thought. We're going to go right on into our regular reading, chapter 30, the Tabernacle and its services. It says, I want to also point out that Yahweh laid this tabernacle and its services down in the type of Moses. And this is our textbook for today, because we have restored this tabernacle and its services in our day, with Yahshua as a center, a focal point of this service. And that's been ongoing now since 1970, so folks, it's been ongoing for a while. It started with the Mount Zion at the 11th hour, people at Gilead Center in Clement, Texas in 1970 with the creation calendar. And the creation calendar is ongoing with Mount Zion at the 12th hour in Liberty Hill, Texas today, because we are the descendants from Mount Zion at the 11th hour. And we're the successors to it, and so now we are bringing Sister White once again to the forefront, for she is the best commentary on this subject. Let us continue now. And let us begin to read. For the command was communicated unto the Moses while in the mount with the Yahweh. Let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them. And full directions were given for the construction of the tabernacle. Their apostasy, the Israelites forfeited the blessing of the divine presence, and for the time rendered impossible the erection of a sanctuary of the Elohim among them. But after they were again taken into the favor with the heaven, the great leader proceeded for the executing of the divine command. Chosen men were especially endowed by the Yahweh Elohim with the skill and wisdom for the construction of the sacred building. For the Elohim himself gave unto Moses the plan of that structure, with the particular directions as to its size and form, for the materials to be employed, and every article of the furniture which it contains. For the holy places made with the hands are for the figures of the true, for the patterns of the things in the heavens. Hebrews 9:24-23. For a miniature representation of the heavenly temple, for the Yahshua, our great high priest, after the offering of his life as a sacrifice, is a minister in the sinner's behalf. For the Elohim is with presenting before the Moses in the mount a total view of the heavenly sanctuary, and is with the commanding him for the making all things according unto the pattern shown unto him in the mount. All these directions were carefully recorded by the Moses, who communicated them unto the leaders of the people. For the building of the sanctuaries, great and expensive preparations were necessary. For a large amount of the most precious and costly material was required. Yet the Yahweh accepted only free will offerings. But every man that giveth it willingly with his heart, ye shall take my offerings, was the divine command repeated unto the Moses by the congregation. For the devotion unto the Yahweh Elohim and a spirit of sacrifice were of the first requisites in the preparing of a dwelling place for the Most High. All the people are with responding with one accord, for they came, everyone whose heart stirred him up, and everyone whom his spirit made willing, and they brought the Yahshua's offering for the work of the tabernacle and for the congregation, and for all of his service, and for the holy garments, and they came both men and women, as many as were willing-hearted, and brought bracelets and earrings and rings and tablets, all jewels of gold, and every man that offered an offering of the gold unto the Yahweh. And every man with whom was found blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen and goat's hair and ramskin dyed red and sealskin brought them. Everyone that did offer an offering of the silver and brass brought the Yahweh's offering. Every man with whom was found acacia wood for any work of the service brought it. And all the women that were wise-hearted did spin with their hands, and brought that which they had spun, the blue and the purple, the scarlet and the fine linen, and all the women whose hearts stirred them up in the wisdom spun the goat's hair. And the rulers brought the onyx stones and the stones to be set for the ephod, and for the breastplate, and the spice, and the oil, for the light, and for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense. Exodus 35, 23, 28. Okay. While the building of the sanctuary, being in the progress, is with the people, old and young, men, women, and children, continuing to bring their offerings until those in the charge of the work found that they had enough, and even more than could be used. And Moses caused to be proclaimed throughout the camp that now the man nor woman make any more work for the offering of the sanctuary. So the people were restrained from the bringing, for the murmurings of the Israelites and the visitations of the Elohim's judgment, because of their sins, are recorded as a warning to after generations. And their devotion, their zeal, and liberality are an example worthy of the imitation. And all who love the worship of the Elohim and prize the blessing of his sacred presence will manifest the same spirit of sacrifice in the preparing of a house where he may meet with them. They would desire to bring the Yahshua now, this is the high priest, an offering of the very best that they possess. For a house built for the Yahweh Elohim and his son, Yahshua, should not be left in the dead, for he is thereby dishonored. An amount sufficient for the accomplishing of the work should be freely given, that the workmen may be able to say, as did the builders of the tabernacle, bring no more offerings up. Okay, now folks, what are we learning here? For those of you that have an ear to hear, the Spirit is no doubt impressing you that we're going to have a repeat of this in an antitypical way, somehow, some way, and that this is in the process of being made up now to be done. But there are going to be people coming by the hundreds and thousands coming out here to this building site, and they're going to help raise up this tabernacle. And what's the reason for raising it up again in our day that had fallen down? So Yahweh and Yahshua can have a place to abide in again. They're not going to come here and abide with their people until their people have raised up this house again and have true worship again, once again, with the true believers of the house of Israel. And when that happens, then you're going to find that this is the place where Yahshua and his son's presence is come to. Wherever this purified house is raised up, and you have the ordained system of true worship being practiced, then that's where you'll find the presence of the Father and the Son. So, until that happens, then your faith won't be strong enough to accept the fact that the Father and the Son are going to come back again, like they did in the past, and make their presence known among their people in the form of worshiping with them in their tabernacle that they have raised up. And how is that going to be? Because the Father and the Son is going to be in that tabernacle, and they're going to be the ones being worshipped again by these saints. There would be no reason for these saints to come into this tabernacle in the Anatites in the 12th parabolic hour if this wasn't so. For the tabernacle was so constructed that it could be taken apart and borne with the Israelites in all of their journeying. For it is therefore small, being not more than 55 feet in the length and 18 in the breadth and height, yet it was a magnificent structure. For the wood employed for the building and its furniture was that of the acacia tree, which is less subject for the decay than any other, to be obtained at the sundown. For the walls consisted of the upright boards set in the silver socket, and held firm by the pillars and connection bars, and all were overlaid with the gold, giving unto the building the appearance of the solid gold. For the roof was formed of the four sets of the curtains, for the innermost of the fine twined linen, and blue and purple and scarlet, with the cherubim of the cunning work. For the other three respectively were of the goats' hair, rams, skin dyed red, and the seal skin so arranged as to afford complete protection. For the building is divided into the two apartments by a rich and beautiful curtain or veil suspended from the gold-plated pillars, and a similar veil closed the entrance of the first apartment. These, like the inner covering which formed the ceiling, were of the most gorgeous colors, blue, purple, and scarlet, beautifully arranged, while inwrought with the threads of the gold and silver were cherubim to represent the angelic host, who are connected with the work of the heavenly sanctuary, and who are ministering spirits unto the people of the Elohim on the earth. For the sacred tent was enclosed in an open space called the court, which is surrounded by the hangings or screens of the fine linen, being suspended from the pillars of the brass. For the entrance into this enclosure is at the eastern end, for it is closed by the curtains of the costly material and a beautiful workmanship, though inferior unto those of the sanctuary. For the hangings of the court being only about half as high as the walls of the tabernacle, the building could be plainly seen by the people without. In the court and nearest the entrance stood the brazen altar of the burnt offering. Upon this altar were consumed all the sacrifices made by the fire unto the Yahweh, and its horns were sprinkled with the atoning blood. Between the altar and the door of the tabernacle was the laver, which was also the brass made from the mirrors that had been the free will offering of the women of Israel. At the laver, the priests were to wash their hands and their feet whenever they went into the sacred apartment or approached the altar to offer a burnt offering unto the Yahweh. In the first apartment, or holy place, were the table of the shewbread, the candlestick or lampstand, and the altar of the incense. For the table of the shewbread stood on the north with its ornamental crown, for it was overlaid with pure gold. On this table the priests were each Sabbath day. They placed 12 cakes arranged into 2 piles and sprinkled with the frankincense. For the loaves that were removed, being accounted holy, were to be eaten by the priest. On the south was the 7-branched candlestick with its 7 lamps. Its branches were ornamented with the exquisitely wrought flowers about the resembling of the lilies, and the whole was made from the one solid piece of the gold, there being no windows in the tabernacle. For the lamps were never all extinguished at the one time, but they shed their light day by the night, by the day and by the night, just before the veil separating of the holy place from the most holy, and the immediate presence of the Elohim stood the golden altar of the incense. So this is on the Day of Atonement, folks, and this happened. The Father and Son are both in the sanctuary working together on that day. That's the only time of the year that the Father and Son works together in the sanctuary at the same time, on the Day of the Atonement. Well, I say upon the Day of Atonement, no doubt probably during the whole Feast of the Tabernacle week too. The Day of Atonement happens on the 10th day of the 7th month, and the last day of the Feast of the Tabernacle takes place on about the 22nd day of that same month. So about 12 days all told, with the the Atonement, and then the Feast of Tabernacle, and then it's finished at the harvest year. Upon this altar the priest was to burn incense every morning and evening, for its horns were touched with the blood of the sin offering, and it was sprinkled with the blood upon the great day of the atonement. We've heard the Adventists have told us about the great antipodal day of the atonement. Well, little did they know exactly how to understand and explain that. Well, we can do that here with the house of David. We explain the great antipodal day of the atonement. We are in the judgment of the living time when the great antipodal atonement is manifested once every year from here on in until probation closes in this 12th hour. Every year on the 10th day of the 7th month, you have a great day of the atonement. For the fire upon this altar was kindled by the Elohim himself and was sacredly cherished day and night. The holy incense diffused its fragrance throughout the sacred apartments and without far around the tabernacle. Beyond the inner veil was the Holy of the Holiest, where centered the symbolic service of the atonement and intercession, and which formed the connection between the heaven and earth. In this apartment was the ark, a chest of the acacia wood, overlaid within and without with the gold, and having a crown of the gold about the top. It was made as a depository for the table of the stone, upon which Elohim himself had inscribed the 10 Commandments. Hence it was called the Ark of the Elohim's Testament, or the Ark of the Covenant, since the 10 Commandments were the basis of the covenant made between the Elohim and Israel. For the cover of the sacred chest was called the mercyseat. For this was wrought of the one solid piece of gold and was surmounted by the golden cherubim, one standing on each end. One wing of each angel was stretched forth on the high, while the other was folded over the body. See Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 11. In the token of the reverence and humility, the position of the cherubim, with their faces turned toward each other and looking reverently downward toward the ark, represented the reverence with which the heavenly host regard the law of the Elohim and their interest in the plan of their redemption. And the plan of redemption, no doubt, is a mystery hid from the foundation of the world. Paul said unto the Gentile Ephesians, he says, this has been now opened up for you to understand. You have to understand it, or you cannot be a part of this covenant that connects the half-brothers of the Gentiles to their brethren, the Jews, and reunite them, the 10 tribes of the 2 tribes, under with the one common bond, and that is both of them have to be partakers of the blood of the everlasting covenant, as taught by the sanctuary system that Moses set up in the world. Above the mercy seat was the Shekinah, or the manifestation of the divine presence, and from between the cherubim, Elohim made known his will, for the divine messages were sometimes communicated unto the high priest by a voice from the cloud. Sometimes a light fell upon the angel at the right to signify approval or acceptance, or a shadow of the cloud rested upon the one at the left to reveal disapproval or rejection. For the law of the Elohim enshrined within the ark was the great rule of the righteousness and judgment. That law pronounced death upon the transgression. But above the law was the mercy seat, upon which the presence of the Elohim is revealed, and from which, by the virtue of the atonement, pardon was granted unto the repentant sinner. Thus, in the work of Yahshua for our redemption, being symbolized by the sanctuary service, in other words, being symbolized by the ordained system of the true worship performed in the sanctuary. Mercy and truth are met together. Righteousness and peace have kissed each other. Psalm 85:10. No language can describe the glory of the scene presented within the sanctuary. For the gold-plated walls are reflecting the light from the golden candlestick with the brilliant hues of the richly embroidered curtains with their shining angel. For the table and the altar of the incense glittering with the gold beyond the sacred veil the ark is a sacred ark. Okay, with its mystic cherubims and above it the holy Shekinah, representing the visible manifestation of the Yahshua and presence along with his son. All, but again, reflection of the glories of the temple of the Elohim in the heaven, or the great center of the work for the man's redemption. For a period of about half a year, is occupied in the building of the Tabernacle. Okay. When it was completed, Moses examined all the work of the builders, comparing it with the patterns shown him in the mount, and the directions he had received from Elohim. As Yahweh had commanded, even so had they done it. And Moses blessed them with the eager interest. The multitudes of Israel crowded around to look upon the sacred structure while they were contemplating the scene with a reverent satisfaction. For the pillar of the cloud floated over the sanctuary and, descending, enveloped it, and the glory of the Yahshua filled the tabernacle. Alright. There was a revealing of the divine majesty, and for a time even Moses could not enter. With the deep emotion the people held the token that the work of their hands was accepted. There were no loud demonstrations of the rejoicing, for a solemn awe rested upon all. Verily, the gladness of their hearts welled up into tears of joy, and they murmured low, earnest words of gratitude that the Elohim had condescended to abide with them. You see what I'm talking about now? Once they get their house in perfect order, then they can be assured and feel the presence of Yahweh's presence there, and the Father and the Son. And that's what fills their heart with gladness and tears of joy when they realize that this has finally been accomplished. And that Yahweh the Father never fails to keep his word. When he makes a promise or an oath, he never fails to keep it as long as you keep your end of the bargain. By the divine direction, the tribe of the Levi was set apart for the service of the sanctuary. In the earliest times, every man was a priest of his own household. In the days of Abraham, the priesthood was regarded as the birthright of the eldest son. Now, instead of the firstborn of all the Israel, Yahshua accepted the tribe of Levi for the work of the sanctuary. By this signal honor, he manifested his approval of their fidelity, both in the adhering unto his service and in the executing of his judgment. And the Israel apostatized in their worship of the golden calf. For the priesthood, however, is restricted unto the family of Aaron. For Aaron and his sons alone are the only ones permitted for the ministering before the Yahweh and the Yahshua. For the rest of the tribe were entrusted with the charge of the tabernacle and its furniture. And they were to attend upon the priest and their ministration, but they were not to sacrifice or to burn incense or to see the holy things till they were covered. In accordance with their office, a special dress was appointed for the priest. Thou shalt make holy garments for the Aaron, thy brother. For the glory and for the beauty, it was a divine direction unto the Moses. For the robe of the common priest was of the white linen, and woven into the one piece. For it extended immediately unto the feet, and was confined about the waist by a white linen girdle, embroidered in the blue, purple, and red. For a linen turban or mitre completed his outer costume. Moses at the burning bush is directed to put off his sandals. For the ground whereon he stood is holy. For the priest was not to enter into the sanctuary with the shoes upon their feet, for the particles of the dust leaving under them would disintegrate the holy place, for they were to leave their shoes in the court before they entered the sanctuary, and also for the washing of both their hands and their feet before the ministering of the tabernacle or at the altar of the burnt offering. Thus is constantly taught the most valuable lesson, that all the defilement must be put away from those who would approach into the presence of the Yahweh Elohim. Now, folks, we're talking about a literal, physical approach into the presence of the Elohim. And unless we can reach this here qualification that I just read to you about, you will not be able to enter into the presence of the Father and His Son when they finally come to claim their own. For the garments of the high priest were of the costly material and beautiful workmanship, befitting his exalted station. In the addition unto the linen dress of the common priest, he wore a robe of the blue, also woven in the one piece around the skirt. It was ornamented with the golden bells and pomegranates of the blue, purple, and scarlet. Outside of this was the ephod, a shorter garment of the gold, blue, purple, scarlet, and white, for it was confined by a girdle of the same color, beautifully wrought. For the ephod was sleeveless, and on its gold embroidered shoulder pieces were set 2 onyx stones bearing the names of the 12 tribes of the Israel. Over the ephod was the breastplate, as the most sacred of the priestly vestment. For this is of the same material as the ephod. For it is in the form of a square, by the measuring of a span, and is with the suspension from the shoulder by a cord of the blue from the golden rings. For the border is also formed of a variety of the precious stones. It is the same that formed the 12 foundations of the city of the Yahweh Elohim. Within the border were 12 stones, set in the gold, arranged in the rows of the 4, unlike those in the shoulder pieces, engraved with the names of the tribes. For the Yahweh's direction is, Aaron shall bear the names of the children of the Israel in the breastplate of the judgment upon his heart, and he goeth in unto the holy place for a memorial before the Yahshua continually. This is the Son now, because he's the one in the sanctuary, and the high priest goes in to present offerings and different ordinances of the sanctuary. They have to offer it before the priest that's in the sanctuary. And this is a sin offering, and it has to be offered in the outer court before it can go into the sanctuary. That's in Exodus 28:29. So the Yahshua, the great high priest, by the pleading of his blood before the Father in the sinner's behalf, is with the bearing upon his heart the name of every repentant, believing soul, says the psalmist. I am the poor and needy. Yet the Yahshua thinketh upon me. Psalms 40, verse 17. At the right and left of the breastplate were two large stones of great brilliancy. These were known as the Urim and Thummim. By them, the will of Elohim was made known to the high priest. When the questions were brought for the decision before the Yahshua, or the Yahweh Elohim, a halo of the light encircling the precious stone to the right was a token of the divine consent or approval, while a cloud shadowing the stone at the left was an evidence of the denial or disapprobation. For the mitre of the high priest is richly consisting of the white linen turban, having attached unto the turban by a lace of the blue is a gold plate bearing of the inscription, Holiness unto the Yahshua. Now look at this. Holiness unto the Yahshua. Everything connected with the apparel and deportment of the priest was to be such as to impress the beholder with a sense of the holiness of the Yahweh Elohim, with the sacredness of his worship and the purity required of those who came into his presence. Okay, it says not only in the sanctuary, verily in the ministration of the priest is for the serving unto the example and shadow of the heavenly things. Hebrews 8:5. Thus, it is of a great importance. And the Yahshua now, look at this, Yahshua the Son, through the Moses, gave the most definite and explicit instruction concerning of the every point of his typical service. For Yahshua, you know, is the heartbeat of this service, offering the blood in this sanctuary, and he's the only one that can offer the eternal blood, and so that makes it the heartbeat of the sanctuary. And Yahshua provides this heart. For the ministration of the sanctuary is with the consisting of the two divisions, as a daily and as a yearly service. For the daily service is performed at the altar of the burnt offering in the court of the tabernacle and in the holy place. Now it says in the court of the tabernacle is called the outer court of the tabernacle, and in the holy place the first apartment. While the yearly service is in the most holy, the second apartment. That yearly service comes on the Day of Atonement one time a year. For that. It comes one time a year for the Pentecost. It comes one time a year for the Passover. The three annual feasts. Passover, Pentecost, and Atonement. For no mortal eye but that of the high priest was to look upon the inner apartment of the sanctuary. Only once a year could the priest enter there, and that after the most careful and solemn preparation. With the trembling he went in before the Yahweh Elohim, and the people in the reverent silence awaited his return, their hearts uplifted in the earnest prayer for the divine blessing. Before the mercyseat, the high priest made the atonement for the Israel, and in the cloud of the glory, Elohim met with him. His stay here beyond the accustomed time filled them with the fear, lest because of their sins or his own, he had been slain by the glory of the Yahshua. Okay. It says here in Matthew 25:31, when the Yahshua himself comes in the glory, with all with the clouds and with the holy angels, when he comes in his glory, he's going to gather all nations before him. Okay, going to put the sheep on the right and the goats on the left. The sheep on the right goes into the everlasting kingdom of the heaven here, sit upon the earth. This everlasting kingdom sit up here on the earth, for instance, right here in the Liberty Hill, Texas, consists of a heavenly place. This is a place when it becomes totally sanctified and purified. Is the presence of Yahshua and Yahweh will be here. Will make their presence known here. And they will make their presence known here, no doubt, on a daily basis. With Yahshua making his presence on a daily basis. For the daily service consisted of the morning and evening burnt offering, for the offering of the sweet incense on the golden altar, and the special offerings for the individual sin. And there were also offerings for the Sabbath, new moons, and special feasts. Your new moons are also holy Sabbaths, and your special feasts are also holy Sabbath days. Including the Pentecost, it's a holy Sabbath day, once a year. Every morning and evening a lamb of a year old was burnt upon the altar. With its appropriate meat offering, thus symbolizing the daily consecration of the nation unto the Yahweh Elohim, and their constant dependence upon the atoning blood of the Yahshua, his son. And whenever you use that word atoning or atone, it means that Yahshua, by his own blood, can make a daily atonement for the remission of sins. But a yearly atonement is made for the blotting out of sin. That's on the 10th day of the 7th month every year, on the great and typical day of the atonement. This is taking place now in the jungle living time, has been ongoing since 2002. Every year we have a great and typical day of atonement. That's in the house of the Yahweh, set up here on this earth. Expressed as the house of the David, recognized as the everlasting kingdom of the Judah, the lawgiver. No doubt Yahshua's presence is here orchestrating the kingdom of heaven here on earth. But the Elohim has expressly directed that every offering presented for the service of the sanctuary should be without the blemish, Exodus 12:5. For the priest were to examine all animals brought as a sacrifice and were to reject every one in which a defect was discovered. Only an offering without the blemish could be a symbol of his perfect purity, who was to offer himself as a lamb without the blemish and without the spot, 1 Peter 1:19. The Apostle Paul points unto these sacrifices as an illustration of what the followers of Yahshua are to become, where he says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of the Yahweh Elohim, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto the Yahweh Elohim. This is your reasonable service, Romans 12:1. We are to give ourselves unto the service of Elohim, and we should seek to make the offering as nearly perfect as possible. The Elohim will not be pleased with anything less than the best we can offer. Those who love him with all the heart will desire to give him the best service of the life, and they will be constantly seeking for the bringing every power of their being into the harmony with the laws that will promote the ability to do his will. In the offering of the incense, the priest is brought more directly into the presence of the Elohim than in any other act of the daily ministration, as the inner veil of the sanctuary did not extend unto the top of the building. The glory of the Elohim, which was manifested above the mercy seat, was partially visible from the first apartment, and the priest offered incense before the Yahweh, for he looked toward the ark, and as the cloud of the incense arose, the divine glory descended upon the mercy seat and filled the most holy place, and often so filled both apartments that the priest was obliged to retire unto the door of the tabernacle. As in that typical service, the priest looked by the faith with the mercy upon the mercy seat, which he could not see. So the people of Elohim are now to direct their prayers unto the Yahshua, their great high priest, who, unseen by the human vision, is pleading on their behalf in the sanctuary above. Time has come for Yahshua to receive prayers as well as their repentance for sin. For the incense ascending with the prayers of the Israel represents the merits and intercession of Yahshua for his perfect righteousness, which through the faith is imputed unto his people, and which can alone make the worship of the sinful beings acceptable unto Elohim. Before the veil of the most holy place was an altar of the perpetual intercession. Before the holy an altar of the continual atonement. By the blood and by the incense Elohim was to be approached, symbols pointing unto the great mediator, through whom sinners may approach Elohim, and through whom alone mercy and salvation can be granted unto the repentant, believing soul. As the priest morning and evening entered the holy place at the time of the incense, the daily sacrifice was ready to be offered upon the altar in the court without. This was the time of the intense interest unto the worshippers who assembled at the tabernacle before entering into the presence of Elohim through the ministration of the priest. They were to engage in the earnest searching of the heart and confession of sin. They united in the silent prayer with their faces toward the holy place. Thus their petitions ascended with the cloud of incense, while the faith laid hold upon the merits of the promised Savior prefigured by the atoning sacrifice. For the hours appointed for the morning and evening sacrifice, which is the 3rd hour of the morning and the 9th hour of the evening, was regarded as sacred. These are holy hours, folks. Okay. And they came to be observed as a set time for the worship throughout the Jewish nation, and when in the latter times the Jews were scattered as the captives in the distant lands, they still at the appointed hour turned their faces toward the Yahweh and offered up their petitions unto Elohim of Israel. In this custom, Christians have an example for the morning and evening prayer, while the Elohim condemns a mere round of the ceremony without the spirit of worship, for he looks with a great pleasure upon those who love him, dying morning and evening for the seeking of the pardon for their sins committed, and for the presenting of their requests for the needed blessings. Okay, it says, for the shewbread was kept ever before the Yahshua as a perpetual offering. Thus it was a part of the daily sacrifice. It was called shewbread, or bread of the presence, because it was ever before the face of the Yahshua. But it was an acknowledgement of the man's dependence upon the Elohim for the both temporal and spiritual food, and that it is received only through the mediation of the Yahshua. Elohim had fed the Israel in the wilderness with the bread from the heaven, and they were still dependent upon his bounty, both for the temporal food and blessing, or spiritual blessing, both manna and the shewbread pointing unto the Yahshua as the living bread, who is ever in the presence of the Elohim for us. There it is right there. Yahshua's presence puts us in the presence of the Father at the same time. He himself said, I am the living bread, which came down from the heaven, John 6:48-51. For the frankincense was placed upon a load. When the bread was removed every Sabbath, to be replaced by the fresh loaves, the frankincense was burned upon the altar as a memorial before the Elohim. But the most important part of the daily ministration was the service performed in behalf of the individuals. For the repentant sinner brought his offering unto the door of the tabernacle, and placing his hand upon the victim's head, confessing of his sin, thus in the figure transferring them from himself unto the innocent sacrifice. By his own hand the animal was then slain, and the blood was carried by the priest into the holy place, that's the first apartment, and sprinkled before the veil. That veil is right between the first apartment and the second apartment. behind which was the ark containing the law. That's in the second apartment. That the sinner had transgressed by this ceremony, the sin was through the blood, transferred in the figure into the sanctuary. That is, through the blood now, the sin had to go through that blood. In some cases, the blood was not taken into the holy place, but the flesh was then to be eaten by the priest, as Moses directed the sons of Aaron, saying, Elohim hath given it unto you to bear the iniquity of the congregation. Leviticus 10:17. Both ceremonies alike symbolize the transfer of the sin from the penitent into the sanctuary. Such was the work that went on day by the day throughout the year, for the sins of Israel being thus transferred into the sanctuary of the holy places were defiled, and a special work became necessary for the removal of the sins. Yahweh Elohim is written commanding that an atonement be made for each of the sacred apartments, as for the altar, to cleanse it and hallow it from the uncleanness of the children of Israel. Leviticus 16:19. Once a year, on the great day of the atonement, the priest entered into the most holy place for the cleansing of the sanctuary. For the work there performed completed the yearly round of administration. On the great day of the atonement, 2 kids of the goats were brought up to the door of the tabernacle, and lots were cast upon them, one lot for the Yahshua, and the other lot for the scapegoat. And for the goat upon which the first lot fell was to be slain as a sin offering for the people. And the priest was to bring his blood within the veil and sprinkle it upon the mercy seat. And he shall make an atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel, and because of their transgression in all their sins. And so shall he do for the tabernacle of the congregation that remaineth among them in the midst of their uncleanness. And Aaron shall lay both his hands upon the head of the live goat, and confess over him all the iniquities of the children of Israel, all their transgression, and all their sins, putting them upon the head of the goat, and shall send him away by the hand of a fit man into the wilderness, and the goat shall bear upon him all the iniquities until a land not inhabited. Not until the goat has been thus sent away did the people regard themselves as freed from the burden of their sin. But every man was to afflict his soul while the work of the atonement was going forward. All business was laid aside, and the whole congregation of Israel spent the day in the solemn humiliation before the Elohim with the prayer, fasting, and deep searching of the heart. For the important truths concerning the atonement were taught by the people, by the yearly service and the sin offering presented during the year, where a substitute had been accepted in the sinner's stead, where the blood of the victim had not made the full atonement for the sin, where he had only provided a means by which the sin was transferred into the sanctuary, that is the first apartment, by the offering of the blood. Okay, so the offering of blood, because that sin is in the blood. So the sinner acknowledged the authority of the law, confessed the guilt of his transgression, and expressed his faith in the blood, that in him who was to take away the sin of the world, that he was not entirely released from the condemnation of the law. On the day of the atonement, the high priest, having taken an offering for the congregation, went into the most holy place with the blood and sprinkled it upon the mercy seat above the tables of the law. Thus the claims of the law which demanded the life of the sinner were satisfied. In his character of the mediator, the priest took the sins upon himself, and leaving the sanctuary, he bore with him the burden of the Israel's guilt. At the door of the tabernacle, he laid his hands upon the head of the scapegoat and confessed over him all the iniquities of the children of Israel, all their transgressions and all their sins, putting them upon the head of the goat. And as the goat bearing these sins was sent away, they were with him regarded as forever separated from the people. Such was the service performed unto the example and shadow of the heavenly things. Hebrews 8:5. As has been stated, the earthly sanctuary being built by the Moses according to the pattern shown him in the mount is a figure for the time then present, or it was a figure, in which were offered both gifts and sacrifices, whereas two holy places were the patterns of the things in the heavens. For the Yahshua, our great high priest, is a minister of that tabernacle, that sanctuary, which is of the true tabernacle, which is Yahweh based and not man. Hebrews 9:23. Hebrews 8:2. As in the vision, the Apostle John is granted a view of the temple of the Elohim in the heaven, for he beheld there 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, for he saw an angel having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. Revelation 4:5, Revelation 8:3. Here the prophet was permitted to behold the first apartment of the sanctuary in the heaven. And he saw there the 7 lamps of the fire and the golden altar represented by the golden candlestick and the altar of the incense in the sanctuary on the earth. Again, the temple of the Elohim was open, folks, and this is not before us today. We're about to bring forth this spiritual temple again today, and it's going to be open to the public and for the people that wants to come and sanctify themselves and follow the same process that they followed in the days of Moses and the children of Israel and the wilderness. Again, the temple of Elohim was open, Revelation 11:19. And he looked within the inner veil upon the Holy of the Holies. Here he beheld the ark of his testament, Revelation 11:19, represented by the sacred chest constructed by the Moses, to contain the law of the Yahweh Elohim. For the Moses made the earthly sanctuary according to the fashion that he had seen. For the Paul declares that the tabernacle and all the vessels of the ministry, when completed, were the patterns of the things in the heavens. Acts 7:44, Hebrews 9:21-23, and John says that he saw the sanctuary in the heaven. That sanctuary in which Yahshua ministers on our behalf is the great original of which the sanctuary built by the Moses was a copy. Now, folks, I'm here to tell you that we are being raised up at this time to resurrect the antitypical spiritual temple that not only will the people present here in this great nation of Texas come to, because they're going to come to this light here upon the hill, but the whole world is going to be drawn unto it here in this western hemisphere. Right here to the Liberty Hill, Texas. This is where this is being brought forward silently, without any noise or any fanfare or anybody around us even knowing that it's happening, but it's happening, folks. For the heavenly temple, the abiding place of the King of the Kings, Yahshua, was 1,000 ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, Daniel 7:10. That's Yahshua. That temple filled with the glory of the eternal throne, where the seraphims, these shining guardians, veil their faces in the adoration. No earthly structure could represent its vastness and its glory. Yet important truths concerning the heavenly sanctuary and the great work there carried forward for the man's redemption were to be taught by the earthly sanctuary and its servants. Folks, this heavenly sanctuary is fast being set up here in Liberty Hill, Texas, and it will be launched from this great hill countries of Judea here very shortly. And this year of 2013, no doubt, it will make its announcement upon the stage of the world. Just bring the close by stage of the you can contact us at the 11th hour call, and that's number 11. Click on the audio archive to hear this message and more. And we're now going to close this service with a song entitled Leaning on the Everlasting Arms. What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting